Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Chris, and I am your Cardvoyant, and let's get back to learning more about the Major Arcana. So then you get the next card, which is the Empress. And the Empress is interesting because she comes right after the High Priestess. Now, the Empress is the fourth card in the Major Arcana, but she is the number 3 card. So the Empress is just a little bit different from the High Priestess because she is much more about the physical world. This will often come up in questions of family, children, fertility, all of those kinds of Earth Mother things. You can see on the card that she wears a crown of stars. She sits on a comfortable, not quite throne, but it's more earthy than a throne, right? She has the feminine symbol at her side, below her. She has the pomegranates that are the symbol of growth. So this card is very much about the idea of Mother Earth or Mother Nature. That's very much what she is. But as I said, it can talk about these Earth Mother topics, but very specifically about family and fertility, birth, children, household things, you know, being the head of a family or a type of family. It can be about growth when we're talking about physical things. The way to remember, the tip that I'm going to give you to remember the Empress is to think of her as this Earth Mother. I mean, she's got all these like plants surrounding her. There's trees and there's grain and all the things. So it's easy to look at this card, the Empress, and think, best mother ever. I mean, that's what she's about. Okay, so you can think of that very easily when you look at the card. Even though it's the Empress, think of it as like the Earth Empress, the Mother Empress, okay? So then we get the Emperor, which is the 5th card, but the number 4 card in the deck. And the Emperor is, you know, the counterpart, obviously, to the Empress, but you can see that this card is much sterner. This has a lot to do with male energy. It can sometimes have to do with aggression or this sternness. It's often about intellectual power, intellectual pursuits, but it can also be about like dominance and those kinds of things that you would associate with a male energy. You can see he's like wearing armor. He's got all this red around him, which is this very passionate, very fiery energy. He's got the ram's heads, which are and the Aries energy, this Mars energy, which can be, you know, quite aggressive and somewhat stern. So when you see this card, you think about all of these aspects of very powerful and dominant male energy. Now, that doesn't mean it's an angry energy. It's just an energy of power. And it is a little bit stern, but there's also, because it's the Emperor, you know, this important figure, there is this sense of knowledge and understanding too. It's like your stern dad, you know, giving you ideas of how you should do things or telling you how things should be done, because he knows, right? So there can be a bit of like an overbearingness sometimes, depends on who you're reading for, but more often than not, it's just about this sort of understanding, this stern, action-oriented figure, or things that have to get done, and often things that have to get done in a certain way. So when you look at the Emperor, the thing to remember about him is just looking at him and thinking of him as the parental figure who guides with a stern hand and with knowledge and love that may be kind of hidden below the surface. But think of it as like your all-knowing dad or granddad, okay? That's the Emperor. So now we come to the Hierophant. The Hierophant is the number 5 card. And remember I said that a lot of times you can just look at the name and it kind of gives you a hint what the card's about. Maybe not so much with the Hierophant, because it's not a word that we use in everyday life. If you do, you have an interesting life and an interesting vocabulary. But the Hierophant in a lot of ways is kind of associated with the High Priestess card, because it is about spirituality to a great extent, but it is more about a more traditional, structured spirituality. So it's often about religion, specific religions, not being religious, but like institutional religion. It's about institutions in general. And there is this feeling of deep inner wisdom, but there's also a feeling of boundaries, of keeping this inner knowledge in sort of a almost restricted religion sense. You can see that he has like supplicants down here, the 2 men. And yet he holds his arms up, which is this welcoming, open gesture. This card, because it's the Hierophant, I'll give you a hint to remember it, because this card is often called the teacher card, or I always think of it as the Pope card. And that's often what it's called, because the figure actually looks, sort of papal. But if you could think of it as the Pope card, it can automatically help you remember that it is about religion, it is about spirituality, it is about institutions, it is about inner knowledge with certain boundaries. Okay, so that's the Hierophant. Okay, so the number 6 card in the Major Arcana is the Lover's card. So this is, we've taken kind of a step here. This is quite different from the cards that have come before it. First of all, it has 2 figures on here, the lovers. And this card can speak very much about specific relationships. One of the things that you'll find when you're reading tarot for people, if you choose to do that, the most common questions I get in readings are about relationships and about jobs. So, and relationships is without a doubt number 1. And it can be about people who are in relationships, people who want relationships, people who just got out of relationships. But I mean, these are big things in our lives. This card talks about that to some extent, because it is talking about sort of the blessing. You can see the angel above. So this is blessing of relationships. So you'll get this sometimes when people are asking about a specific relationship, or if a relationship is coming. I've gotten this before when people have asked about, will I ever find someone? And this is sometimes a card of reassurance that they'll get. But this card is also about the dual nature of human beings. So when you're female, you still have this portion of the male in you. And when you're male, you still have this portion of the female energy within you. And it talks about that. This card speaks to that idea. It also, just having the male and female on the card, you can see there's like the tree of knowledge, the tree of life, the snake, all these images that also talk about the dual nature of human beings, right? The ways in which we can be pure and the ways in which we can be rather savage. So this card you'll find that come up in readings where people are dealing with sort of personal problems, or people in their lives who represent that, or trying to figure out things in their lives to steady their own nature. This card, though, is quite positive, right? Whenever I see a lot of red, this passion, or yellow, this peace and happiness, then you get this good feeling with the card. And generally you get that with a Lover's card. The way to remember it easily is to look at it, and you can see that it evokes this imagery of the Garden of Eden. So as you know, or if you don't, the Garden of Eden is very much about duality. I mean, it's also about a relationship, but it is about this dual nature of man, the sort of the knowledge and the innocence, right? So when you look at the Lover's card, just take a glance, and if you're, caught off guard and think, oh, what is this about? Remember the Garden of Eden and the imagery of the Garden of Eden and the idea of the Garden of Eden, and that will give you a lot of help in using this card in a reading. Thanks for tuning in to learn more about the Major Arcana cards number 3, 4, 5, and 6. Please come back again to learn more.